The stars outside the viewport shimmered faintly, their light distorted by the thin veil of Saturn's rings. Inside the asterisk, U.S. Odyssey asterisk, Commander Alex Carter leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the rows of monitors before him. The mission was supposed to be routine, a quick flyby to investigate an unusual energy reading near the rings. Nothing out of the ordinary, just another day in deep space. Behind him, Dr. Laura Bennett adjusted her glasses and peered at the data scrolling across her screen. She was the ship's xenobiologist, though today her role felt more like that of a detective. "This anomaly doesn't match anything we've seen before," she said, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "It's not natural." Jake Monroe, the ship's engineer, popped his head up from beneath a console where he'd been tinkering with a malfunctioning sensor array. His dark hair stuck out in all directions, and there was a smudge of grease on his cheek. "You think it's aliens?" he asked with a grin. "Because if it is, I hope they've got cool gadgets." Alex chuckled softly. "Let's not jump to conclusions yet. Could just be some weird magnetic interference." But even as he spoke, his fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest of his chair. Something about this didn't sit right with him. The ship drifted closer to the anomaly, a swirling vortex of light and shadow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. On the main monitor, the readings spiked erratically. Warning alarms blared, startling everyone. Jake scrambled to shut them off while Laura furrowed her brow, studying the patterns on her screen. "Commander," she said after a moment, her tone serious now, "whatever this thing is, it's pulling us in." Before Alex could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and for a brief second, everything went black. When the power returned, the crew found themselves staring at something entirely unexpected. The view outside the window wasn't Saturn anymore. Instead, they were surrounded by a vast expanse of unfamiliar stars, their colors richer and more vibrant than anything they'd ever seen. "What happened?" Jake muttered, rubbing his temples. He looked pale, but otherwise, he seemed oddly unfazed. Laura stood up slowly, her gaze fixed on the strange new sky. "We're not in our solar system anymore," she said matter-of-factly. Her voice carried no trace of panic, only quiet wonder. Alex turned to face his crew, his expression unreadable. "Everyone okay?" he asked, his voice steady despite the surreal situation. "I'm fine," Laura replied, already returning to her station to analyze the new data. "But this doesn't make sense. How did we get here so fast?" Jake shrugged, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Beats me. Maybe we stumbled into some kind of cosmic shortcut. Or maybe," he paused, grinning again, "maybe we're dreaming." To his surprise, no one laughed. In fact, none of them seemed particularly shocked by what had just occurred. It was as though they'd expected something like this might happen eventually. Even Alex, who prided himself on being level-headed and practical, couldn't muster much concern. Instead, he felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if this moment had been waiting for them all along. "Well," he said finally, breaking the silence, "let's figure out where we are and how to get back home." As the crew set to work, none of them noticed the faint hum growing louder around the ship, nor did they see the sleek silver ships emerging from the distance, their shapes gliding effortlessly through the void. For now, they were too focused on solving the mystery of their sudden relocation, and strangely enough, none of them seemed bothered by the fact that they had just entered uncharted territory, literally and figuratively. The hum grew louder, filling the cabin of the asterisk U.S. Odyssey asterisk with a low, steady vibration. Outside the viewport, sleek silver ships appeared one by one, their smooth surfaces glinting in the light of a nearby star. The vessels moved with precision, surrounding the human ship as if inspecting it. Yet, instead of fear or panic, the crew watched calmly, almost as if they'd seen this kind of thing before. "Looks like we've got company," Jake said, leaning over the control panel. His tone was casual, like he was commenting on the weather rather than an encounter with unknown spacecraft. Alex nodded, his eyes scanning the monitors. They're not attacking. That's something, at least. He tapped a few buttons to bring up more data, but found nothing useful. Whatever these ships were made of, their technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed. Laura stood near the viewport, her arms crossed as she studied the alien ships. They're beautiful, she murmured. But there's something familiar about them. Jake raised an eyebrow. Familiar? You mean you've seen spaceships like this in your dreams? She shook her head. No, it's hard to explain. It's like I've seen designs like that somewhere before, maybe in old books or carvings. Before anyone could respond, a bright flash erupted from one of the silver ships. For a moment, the entire cabin lit up, and then a voice boomed through the speakers. It wasn't harsh or menacing. It sounded calm, clear, and oddly human. Citizens of the Galactic Empire, identify yourselves. The crew froze for a second, exchanging confused glances. Alex stepped forward, pressing the button to activate the ship's communication system. This is Commander Alex Carter of the U.S. Odyssey *. We're humans from Earth. Who are you? There was a brief pause, followed by another response. We are the Valon Collective, guardians of the Empire's frontier. Explain your presence here. Alex hesitated. How could he explain something he didn't understand himself? Finally, he replied, We were investigating an anomaly near Saturn when we arrived here. We didn't mean to intrude. The voice on the other end seemed to consider this. After a moment, it spoke again. Stand by. A transport vessel will escort you to Station Kayla for further evaluation. Jake let out a low whistle. Well, that escalated quickly. Guess we're going on a little field trip. Laura frowned. Do you think we should trust them? Alex shrugged. We don't have much choice. Besides, they haven't done anything threatening yet. Minutes later, a larger ship detached from the group and positioned itself alongside the Odyssey *. A beam of light enveloped the smaller craft, pulling it gently into a docking bay. As the crew prepared to disembark, none of them felt the anxiety or dread that might have been expected. Instead, they moved with quiet confidence, as though they'd rehearsed this moment countless times. When the airlock opened, they stepped onto the station, greeted by a tall figure clad in shimmering armor. Its face was partially obscured by a helmet, but its posture radiated authority. Welcome, the figure said in flawless English. I am Commander Valon. Please follow me. The station was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The walls glowed softly, casting a warm light across the corridors. Strange symbols adorned the surfaces, pulsating faintly as if alive. Despite the alien environment, the crew felt no sense of unease. In fact, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that she'd walked these halls before, even though she knew that was impossible. As they followed Valon deeper into the station, they passed groups of aliens going about their business. Some looked humanoid, while others bore features so bizarre they defied description. Yet none of them paid much attention to the newcomers. It was as though humans wandering through a galactic hub was an everyday occurrence. Finally, they'd reached a large chamber where another figure awaited them, a woman with pale skin and sharp green eyes. She wore robes that shimmered like liquid metal, and her expression was both curious and calculating. I am Ambassador Kayla, she said, her voice smooth and inviting. You are humans, yes. From Earth. Alex nodded. That's correct. But how do you know about us? Kayla smiled faintly. Because you are citizens of the Galactic Empire. You simply forgot. The statement hung in the air, heavy and strange. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jake broke the silence with a shrug. Forgot. Well, that explains why this all feels so normal. Kayla tilted her head, studying him intently. You aren't surprised. Nope, Jake replied with a grin. Should we be? Her smile widened slightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. Perhaps not. Perhaps you remember more than you realize. As the crew exchanged uncertain looks, Alex stepped forward. What do you mean, forgot? And why does everyone keep saying we're part of this empire? The chamber was quiet except for the faint hum of energy coursing through the walls. Ambassador Kayla sat across from the humans, her green eyes studying them intently. Alex leaned forward in his chair, his brow furrowed as he waited for answers. Laura sat beside him, her notebook open on her lap, ready to jot down every word. Jake lounged casually, his arms crossed, looking like he'd just walked into a coffee shop instead of an alien space station. You said we're citizens of the Galactic Empire, Alex began, his voice steady but curious. What does that mean? How can we be part of something we've never heard of? Kayla nodded slowly, as if she'd expected this question. Earth was once a colony of the Empire, she explained. A long time ago, thousands of years by your reckoning. It thrived under our guidance. Your ancestors were explorers, scientists, and builders. They contributed much to the Empire's growth. Laura frowned. If that's true, why don't we remember any of it? Why is Earth so primitive compared to this place? Kayla's expression softened, though there was a hint of sadness in her gaze. There was an event, a great catastrophe, that severed Earth's connection to the Empire. Many colonies were lost during that time, scattered across the galaxy. Earth fell into chaos, and over generations, its people forgot their origins. Technology regressed, knowledge faded, and eventually, humanity believed itself alone in the universe. Jake raised an eyebrow. So you're saying we used to be part of this fancy club, but then someone forgot to pay the membership fee? Kayla gave him a small smile. In a way, yes. But it wasn't negligence. It was survival. After the catastrophe, the Empire had no choice but to focus on rebuilding what remained. Reaching out to distant colonies like Earth became impossible. Alex rubbed his temples, trying to process everything. But now we're here. Does that mean you've been watching us all this time? Not exactly, Kayla replied. We knew Earth existed, but its location was buried deep within ancient records. Until today, we assumed it was still beyond our reach. Your arrival here is unexpected, to say the least. Laura glanced at her notebook, then back at Kayla. You mentioned catastrophe. What happened? Was it war? A natural disaster? Kayla hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her metallic robe. It was both. A conflict within the Empire led to the collapse of key systems, including communication networks and transportation grids. Entire star systems were cut off. By the time stability returned, many colonies, including yours, had vanished into obscurity. Jake whistled softly. Sounds rough. But hey, at least we bounced back, right? I mean, we made spaceships and stuff. Kayla's smile widened slightly. Indeed, humanity's resilience has always been remarkable. Even isolated, you managed to rebuild and explore. That's why your presence here intrigues us. You carry echoes of the past, yet you forged a new path. Alex leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Let's say we believe you. What happens now? Are you planning to drag us back into this empire? Kayla shook her head. No one will force you to do anything. However, reintegrating Earth into the empire could benefit both sides. You would gain access to knowledge and resources far beyond what you currently possess, and the empire would welcome back a people who once played a vital role in its history. Laura tapped her pen against her notebook thoughtfully. It sounds tempting, but how do we know this isn't some kind of trap? For all we know, you could have caused that catastrophe yourselves. Kayla didn't flinch at the accusation. It's understandable to be cautious, but consider this. If we wanted to harm you, we could have done so already. Instead, we've chosen to speak openly and offer assistance. The decision is yours to make. Jake stretched his arms above his head, yawning dramatically. Well, I'm not complaining. Free tech upgrades sound pretty sweet to me. Alex shot him a look, then turned back to Kayla. We'll need time to think about this. Can you give us that? Of course, Kayla said with a nod. Take as much time as you need. In the meantime, feel free to explore the station. Perhaps seeing more of the Empire will help you decide. As they stood to leave, Laura lingered for a moment. One more thing, she said. Why does all of this feel so familiar? Like we've been here before, even though we haven't. Kayla's gaze softened again. Perhaps because, deep down, you have. The station's corridors were alive with activity as the crew of the US Odyssey began their exploration. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past them, some gliding gracefully while others shuffled awkwardly on multiple limbs. Despite the strangeness of it all, Alex, Laura, and Jake felt surprisingly at ease, as though they belonged there. This place is wild, Jake said, his eyes darting from one alien to another. Look at that guy. He's got 6 arms. Wonder how he ties his shoes. Laura rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. Focus, Jake. We're supposed to be learning about this empire, not critiquing fashion choices. Hey, I'm just saying, if we join this club, I hope they've got cool gadgets for us too. Alex ignored their banter and gestured toward a nearby display panel covered in glowing symbols. Does any of this look familiar to you? He asked Laura. She stepped closer, tilting her head as she studied the markings. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Actually, yeah, some of these patterns remind me of ancient carvings I've seen in textbooks, like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mayan symbols. It's like someone took Earth's old languages and gave them an upgrade. Jake squinted at the panel. So you're saying our ancestors might have helped design this stuff? That's kinda cool. It's more than cool, Laura replied, her voice tinged with excitement. If these symbols really are connected to Earth's history, it proves Ambassador Kayla wasn't lying. Humanity was part of this empire once. As they continued walking, they passed shops and workstations where aliens tinkered with advanced tools and devices. One shop caught Jake's attention, a small booth filled with strange machines that hummed softly. He wandered over and picked up what looked like a handheld gadget, its surface smooth and metallic. What's this thing do? He asked the alien shopkeeper, who blinked at him with wide, insect-like eyes. The alien responded in a series of chirps and clicks, which translated instantly into English through the comms device clipped to Jake's ear. It is a molecular scanner, useful for analyzing materials. Jake grinned. Handy. Think you'd trade it for a handshake? The alien tilted its head curiously, but didn't respond. Shaking his head, Jake set the device down and rejoined the group. Guess they don't barter here. Further down the corridor, they entered a massive chamber filled with holographic projections of planets, stars, and entire galaxies. Each image rotated slowly, accompanied by streams of data flowing alongside them. Laura stopped in front of one projection, an Earth-like planet surrounded by rings of glowing debris. Is that Earth? She whispered, stepping closer. A nearby alien noticed her interest and approached. That is Terra Prime, it said in a deep, resonant voice. Your homeworld during the era of the Empire. Laura's breath caught in her throat. The planet looked so vibrant, so full of life. Towering cities floated among the clouds, connected by shimmering bridges of light. Oceans sparkled under twin suns, and forests stretched endlessly across continents. It was nothing like the Earth she knew today. That can't be real, Alex muttered, shaking his head. There's no way Earth ever looked like that. The alien nodded solemnly. Much has been lost. The great catastrophe erased much of your people's achievements, but echoes remain, buried beneath layers of time. Jake frowned, scratching the back of his neck. So what you're saying is, we used to have flying cars and laser guns, but now we're stuck with traffic jams and smartphones. That's rough. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. Progress is cyclical. Perhaps your kind will rise again. Leaving the chamber, the group found themselves in a quieter section of the station. Here, The walls were adorned with murals depicting scenes of cooperation between humans and other species. In one mural, humans stood shoulder to shoulder with tall, elegant aliens working together to build a sprawling city. In another, they explored distant planets, mapping uncharted territories. "These aren't just random pictures," Laura said softly, her fingers brushing against the mural surface. "They're memories, proof that humanity played a role in shaping this empire." Alex crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "If all this is true, then why did the empire abandon us when things went wrong? Why leave Earth to fend for itself?" Laura hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Maybe it wasn't abandonment. Maybe they tried to come back, but couldn't. Or maybe Earth chose to forget. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You think we did this to ourselves? Purposely erased our own history?" "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But something about this feels intentional. Like we wanted to start over." As they stood in silence, absorbing the weight of their discoveries, a sudden realization dawned on Alex. If Earth was once part of this empire, then maybe rejoining isn't such a bad idea. We could learn so much from them. Rebuild what we lost. But at what cost? Laura countered. "We don't know enough yet. What if joining means giving up our independence?" Jake shrugged. "Or maybe it means leveling up. Either way, I vote we keep exploring. Worst case, we make friends with some cool aliens." Alex smiled faintly. "Let's keep moving. There's still more to see, and more questions to answer." The next stop on their tour was a massive laboratory filled with glowing tanks, bubbling liquids, and machines that hummed with energy. Scientists, both alien and human-looking, moved around the room, conducting experiments or analyzing data on floating screens. Laura's eyes widened as she took it all in, her excitement barely contained. "This is amazing," she whispered, stepping closer to one of the tanks. Inside floated what appeared to be a cluster of tiny glowing orbs. "What are these?" A nearby scientist turned to her, its elongated face framed by soft, feathery tendrils. "Those are biocores," it explained in a melodic voice. "They store genetic information for research purposes." Laura tilted her head, fascinated. "So you can preserve life forms this way? That's incredible." The scientist nodded. "Indeed, we've cataloged countless species across the galaxy, including yours." "Ours?" Alex asked sharply, stepping forward. "You mean humans?" "Yes," the scientist replied calmly. "Your kind has been studied extensively. Your adaptability and creativity are unmatched among carbon-based life forms." Jake smirked. "See? Told you we were special." Laura ignored him, her mind racing. "If you've studied us so much, why didn't you reach out sooner? Why let Earth stay isolated?" The scientist hesitated, exchanging a glance with another figure nearby. Finally, it spoke. "There were complications. After the Great Catastrophe, Earth became difficult to locate. By the time we rediscovered your planet, your society had regressed too far for meaningful contact." Alex frowned. "Meaningful contact? You mean you tried before?" "Several times," the scientist admitted. "But early attempts resulted in misunderstandings. Your people reacted with fear or hostility. It was decided that further intervention would do more harm than good." Jake scratched his head. "Wait, so you're saying aliens have visited Earth before, and we just freaked out?" "In essence, yes," the scientist said. "Your ancestors interpreted our presence as divine or supernatural events. Many myths and legends from your history originated from those encounters." Laura's pen hovered over her notebook. "That explains a lot. Like ancient stories about gods descending from the sky or chariots of fire." Alex crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "So when Kayla said humanity forgot, she wasn't exaggerating. We literally rewrote our own history." The scientist nodded. "Your species possesses an extraordinary ability to adapt, not just physically, but mentally. When faced with overwhelming change, You simplified your reality to survive. Jake leaned against a nearby console, his grin returning. Guess that makes us pretty tough cookies, huh? Before anyone could respond, a loud alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed along the walls, casting eerie shadows across the lab. The scientists immediately stopped their work, rushing toward various stations to assess the situation. What's happening? Alex demanded, turning to the nearest scientist. A security breach, it replied tersely. Unidentified vessels approaching the station. Laura's heart raced. Are we under attack? The scientist hesitated. Unknown, but precautions are being taken. As the crew hurried back into the corridor, they noticed groups of armed guards moving swiftly toward docking bays. Jake glanced at Alex, his usual humor replaced by seriousness. Think we should stick around for this? We don't have a choice, Alex replied. We're still guests here. Let's find out what's going on. They followed the flow of personnel until they reached a large observation deck overlooking the station's exterior. Through the viewport, they saw several ships hovering nearby, their designs jagged and menacing compared to the sleek vessels of the Empire. Energy beams shot between the ships, lighting up the void like fireworks. Who are they? Laura asked, gripping the railing tightly. One of the guards standing nearby answered. Rebels. They oppose the Empire's authority and often target Imperial assets. Alex narrowed his eyes. Do they know we're here? The guard shook his head. Doubtful, but if they discover your presence, it could complicate matters. Jake raised an eyebrow. Complicate how? Are they gonna kidnap us or something? Possibly, the guard admitted. Or worse. Laura swallowed hard, glancing at Alex. What do we do? Alex clenched his jaw, determination flashing in his eyes. For now, we stay put and keep quiet. This isn't our fight. As the battle raged outside, Laura couldn't help but notice something strange. Despite the chaos, none of the humans seemed particularly frightened. Even Jake, who usually joked during tense moments, remained oddly calm. It was as though they'd seen this kind of conflict before, or expected it. When the fighting finally subsided, the rebel ships retreated into the distance, leaving behind a trail of debris. The station's alarms silenced, and the red lights faded, replaced by the familiar glow of the walls. Well, Jake said, breaking the silence. That was exciting. What's next? Kayla's voice suddenly echoed through the speakers. Commander Carter, please report to the central chamber immediately. There is much to discuss. Alex exchanged a glance with his crew. Something told him their adventure was far from over. The central chamber was dimly lit when Alex, Laura, and Jake arrived, the air thick with tension. Ambassador Kayla stood at the far end of the room, her metallic robes shimmering faintly in the low light. Around her, holographic displays floated, showing images of the recent battle and the rebel ships that had attacked the station. Her expression was calm, but there was a sharpness in her green eyes that hadn't been there before. You wanted to see us? Alex asked, stepping forward. His voice was steady, though his mind raced with questions. Kayla nodded. Yes, the incident with the rebels has complicated matters. Their presence here is no coincidence. Laura frowned. What do you mean? Do they know about us? It's possible, Kayla replied. The rebels have spies everywhere. They may have learned of your arrival and seen it as an opportunity to strike. Jake crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. So we're like collateral damage now. Great. Kayla turned to him, her gaze unwavering. You are more than that. To them, your presence represents a threat, or a potential ally. Alex raised an eyebrow. An ally? Why would they care about us? Because you are humans, Kayla explained. Your species has a reputation for resilience and innovation. If the rebels can convince you to join their cause, it could weaken the Empire's influence. Laura stepped closer, her curiosity getting the better of her. What exactly is their cause? What do they want? Kayla hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke. The rebels oppose the Empire's centralized control. They believe power should be distributed among all species, not concentrated in the hands of a few. While their ideals may seem noble, their methods are destructive. They will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Jake let out a low whistle. Sounds like your typical freedom fighters versus big government drama. Seen it in movies 100 times. Kayla's lips pressed into a thin line. This is no movie, Mr. Monroe. The rebels' actions endanger countless lives, including yours. Alex rubbed the back of his neck, thinking, so what happens now? Are we safe here, or do we need to leave? For now, you're safe, Kayla assured him. But I must ask something of you. Your skills could prove invaluable in helping us evaluate whether humanity is ready to reintegrate into the Empire. Laura tilted her head. What kind of skills? Kayla gestured to the holograms around her. Commander Carter, your leadership and decision-making abilities will be tested in simulated scenarios. Dr. Bennett, your knowledge of biology and adaptability will aid our scientists in understanding humanity's unique traits. And Mr. Monroe, she paused, glancing at Jake. Your technical expertise could help us improve certain systems aboard the station. Jake grinned. Finally, someone recognizes my genius. Alex ignored him, focusing on Kayla. And if we agree to this, what's in it for us? Kayla's expression softened slightly. If you succeed, you will gain access to resources and knowledge that could transform Earth. You would no longer be isolated. Humanity could reclaim its place among the stars. Laura exchanged a glance with Alex. The offer was tempting, but something still felt off. What if we fail? She asked. Kayla's gaze hardened. Failure is not an option. If the rebels discover your weaknesses, they will exploit them. Both humanity and the Empire would suffer the consequences. Jake pushed off the wall, shrugging. Well, no pressure, right? Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. We don't have much choice. If staying means protecting Earth, and maybe learning how to help it, then we'll do what we have to. Kayla nodded approvingly. Good. Your assignments begin immediately. Over the next few hours, the crew split up to tackle their tasks. Alex found himself in a virtual simulation room, navigating complex diplomatic negotiations between alien factions. Despite the unfamiliar settings, he adapted quickly, his instincts guiding him through each challenge. Laura worked alongside a team of alien scientists, analyzing samples of human DNA and comparing them to other species in the Empire's database. To her surprise, she discovered subtle similarities between human genetics and those of several advanced races, a clue, perhaps, to humanity's forgotten origins. Meanwhile, Jake tinkered with a malfunctioning energy conduit in one of the station's engineering bays. Though the technology was far beyond anything he'd seen before, he found it surprisingly intuitive, as if his hands already knew what to do. As the day wore on, the crew began to notice something strange. Each task they completed felt oddly familiar, as though they'd done it before in another life. Alex's decisions came naturally, Laura's insights seemed almost instinctual, and Jake fixed problems faster than even the aliens expected. By the time they regrouped in the central chamber, exhaustion lined their faces, but so did determination. They had proven themselves capable, but the experience left them with more questions than answers. What's going on, Alex? Laura asked quietly as they walked back to their quarters. Why does everything feel like déjà vu? Alex shook his head, his jaw tight. I don't know, but I think it's time we started digging deeper. Something's not adding up. Jake smirked. You think? Maybe it's just space magic. Laura shot him a glare, but Alex didn't laugh. For the first time since arriving, he felt a flicker of unease. Whatever secrets the Empire was hiding, they were bigger than any of them had imagined. That night, sleep didn't come easily for Alex. He lay on the narrow bunk in his quarters, staring at the glowing ceiling as his mind replayed the day's events. The simulations, Kayla's words, the strange sense of familiarity. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. Something about the Empire's story wasn't adding up, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being kept in the dark. Finally, unable to stay still, he slipped out of bed and headed to the station's archives. If there were answers hidden anywhere, it would be there. Laura had mentioned earlier that the archives contained records dating back thousands of years. Maybe, just maybe, he could find something that would explain why everything felt so off. The archive room was quiet, its walls lined with glowing panels displaying endless streams of data. Alex wandered through the aisles, searching for anything related to Earth or humanity. After a few minutes, he found a section labeled Lost Colonies and activated one of the panels. A flood of information appeared, scrolling faster than he could read. Frustrated, he slowed it down, scanning the text for clues. What he found made his blood run cold. Buried deep within the records was a classified file marked Project Terra Reset. Opening it, Alex discovered documents detailing a deliberate effort by the Empire to erase Earth's memory of its origins. Entire databases had been wiped, communication networks dismantled, and advanced technologies removed. It wasn't just a result of the Great Catastrophe. It had been planned. Alex clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. So much for Kayla's talk of unity and cooperation. The Empire hadn't simply abandoned Earth. They had deliberately cut ties, leaving humanity to struggle in ignorance. Find something interesting. Laura's voice startled him, and he turned to see her standing in the doorway, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. She looked pale, her eyes wide with worry. "You're not going to believe this," Alex said, stepping aside so she could see the panel. "They didn't just forget about us. They erased us." Laura skimmed the documents, her lips parting in shock. This changes everything. Why would they do this? To maintain control, Alex muttered bitterly. If Earth didn't know about the Empire, we couldn't challenge them. We were easier to ignore. Laura shook her head, her fingers trembling as she jotted notes into her book. But why now? Why bring us back after all this time? I don't know, Alex admitted. Maybe they need us for something. Or maybe the rebels are right. Maybe the Empire is scared of what we could become. Before they could discuss it further, Jake appeared, rubbing his eyes sleepily. What are you two doing up? Planning a mutiny? We found something, Laura said quietly, showing him the documents. Something bad. Jake's usual smirk faded as he read the information. For once, he didn't crack a joke. So they wiped our memories on purpose. That's messed up. Exactly, Alex said. And we can't trust Kayla or anyone else here. Whatever they want from us, it's not about helping Earth. It's about helping themselves. Laura bit her lip, thinking hard. What do we do? Confront them? Try to escape? Neither, Alex replied firmly. We play along for now. But we need to find allies. Someone who can help us figure out what's really going on. Jake raised an eyebrow. You mean like the rebels? Alex hesitated. The idea of working with the rebels made him uneasy, but they might be the only ones willing to tell the truth. Maybe. But we have to be careful. If Kayla finds out we're onto her, we're dead. The three of them agreed to keep their discovery a secret and return to their quarters. As Alex lay back down, his mind raced with possibilities. The rebels had attacked the station earlier. Could they reach out without getting caught? And if they did, could they really trust them? The next morning, the crew reported for their assignments as usual, pretending nothing had changed. But Alex kept a close eye on Kayla, watching for any sign of deception. During a briefing in the central chamber, she announced plans to send a delegation to Earth to assess its readiness for reintegration. This is your chance, Kayla said, addressing the crew. You will accompany the delegation and act as liaisons between humanity and the Empire. Laura forced a smile, though her stomach churned with unease. When do we leave? Within the week, Kayla replied. Prepare yourselves. This mission will determine Earth's future and yours. As the meeting ended, Jake leaned over to whisper to Alex, "Think this is a trap?" "Probably," Alex muttered under his breath. "But it's also our best shot at finding answers." Later that day, while exploring another section of the station, Alex spotted a group of aliens speaking in hushed tones near a maintenance hatch. One of them glanced his way, then quickly turned away. Something about their behavior caught his attention. When the group dispersed, he approached the hatch and pressed his ear against it. Faint voices echoed from the other side. "Do you think they suspect?" one voice asked. "No," another replied. "But we need to move quickly. The ambassador grows impatient." Alex's heart pounded. These weren't ordinary station workers. They were rebels, and they were planning something big. Alex hesitated for a moment, his hand still resting on the hatch. The voices on the other side were speaking in low tones, their words muffled but urgent. He knew he should leave, retreat before someone noticed him eavesdropping. But curiosity got the better of him. If these aliens were rebels, they might hold the key to understanding what the Empire was hiding. Taking a deep breath, Alex pushed the hatch open just enough to slip inside. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, its walls lined with exposed wires and blinking control panels. A group of 3 aliens stood at the far end, huddled around a glowing device. They turned sharply when they heard his footsteps, their eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Who are you?" one of them demanded, stepping forward. Its voice was harsh, almost guttural, and it carried an edge of hostility. "I'm Alex," he said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I overheard you talking about the ambassador. I think we want the same thing." The alien tilted its head, studying him carefully. "You're one of the humans," it said finally, its tone softer but still cautious. "What do you know?" Alex glanced over his shoulder to ensure no one else was nearby, then stepped closer. "I know the Empire erased Earth's memory on purpose, and I know Kayla isn't telling us the whole truth." The second alien exchanged a glance with the first. "So you've seen the records?" Alex nodded. "Some of them. Enough to know we can't trust her." The third alien, smaller and more delicate-looking than the others, spoke up. "If you're telling the truth, then you understand why we fight. The Empire controls everything: resources, knowledge, even history. They decide who thrives and who fades into obscurity." Laura's words echoed in Alex's mind. Asterisk, what if the rebels are right? Asterisk, he swallowed hard. "I get it. But what's your plan? What are you doing here?" The first alien gestured toward the glowing device. "This is a signal disruptor. We're planning to disable the station's defenses temporarily. It'll give us time to escape, and maybe take some valuable data with us." Jake's voice suddenly cut through the tension. "Well, this looks cozy." He strolled into view, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Mind if I join the party?" Alex shot him a glare. "How did you find me?" "You weren't exactly subtle," Jake replied with a shrug. "Besides, I figured you'd end up sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." The aliens tensed, ready to bolt, but Alex quickly intervened. "He's with me. Trust me, he's useful." After a brief pause, the first alien nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but if either of you betrays us, you won't live to regret it." "We're not here to betray anyone," Alex assured them. "We just want answers, and maybe a way out." The smaller alien stepped forward, its large, luminous eyes locking onto Alex's. "If you truly seek the truth, follow us. But be warned, this path will not be easy." Without waiting for a response, the rebels moved deeper into the maintenance tunnels, motioning for Alex and Jake to follow. The narrow passageways twisted and turned, leading them farther away from the main sections of the station. Along the way, Alex couldn't help but notice strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols that looked eerily similar to the ones Laura had pointed out earlier. Finally, they'd reached a hidden chamber filled with makeshift equipment and holographic maps. One map, in particular, caught Alex's attention. It showed Earth surrounded by red markers labeled Empire outposts. "What's this?" he asked, pointing to the map. "It's their plan," the first alien explained. "The Empire intends to reestablish control over Earth, not as equals, but as subjects. Your arrival here wasn't an accident. They've been watching you for years, waiting for the right moment to intervene." Jake let out a low whistle. "So we're pawns in their game. Lovely." Alex clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Not if we stop them first. How much time do we have before they send that delegation to Earth?" "Days," the smaller alien replied. "Maybe less." Alex turned to Jake. "We need to warn Laura. She's the only one who can help us figure out how to expose this." Jake nodded. "Got it. But we'll need a distraction if we're going to sneak back without getting caught." The rebels exchanged glances, then the first alien smirked. "Leave that to us. We'll keep the guards busy while you move." As Alex and Jake prepared to leave, the smaller alien handed Alex a small device. "Take this. It's a data chip containing proof of the Empire's plans. Use it wisely." Alex accepted the chip, his grip tightening around it. "Thanks. For what it's worth, I hope you succeed." "So do we," the alien replied solemnly. "For all our sakes." Back in the main section of the station, Alex and Jake found Laura waiting anxiously in their quarters. When they explained what they'd learned, her face paled. "We have to act fast," she said, clutching the notebook she always carried. "But how do we prove the Empire's betrayal without getting ourselves killed?" Alex held up the data chip. "This is a start. Now we just need a plan. And allies we can trust." Laura hesitated, then nodded. "Then let's make sure we don't fail." The trio huddled in their quarters, the data chip resting on the table between them. Laura stared at it, as if it might explode, her mind racing with possibilities. "If this chip contains what they promised," she said softly, "it could change everything. But we need to get it into the right hands." Jake leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the armrest. "Right hands. Like who? The rebels? Or do we try to broadcast it across the station?" Alex shook his head. "We can't risk broadcasting yet. If Kayla finds out, she'll shut us down before we even start. No, we need someone on the inside. Someone who has access to the Empire's communication systems, but won't turn us in." Laura frowned, flipping through her notebook. "What about Commander Valon? He seems less rigid than Kayla. Maybe he'd listen." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You think Mr. Shiny Armor is gonna betray his boss just because we ask nicely?" "He doesn't have to betray anyone," Alex interjected. "We just need him to give us access long enough to upload the data. After that, it's out of our hands." Laura nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might work. If we'd frame it as helping Earth, he might go along with it. Or he might throw us in a cell," Jake muttered under his breath. Ignoring him, Alex stood up. "I'll talk to Valon. You two stay here and figure out how to decrypt the chip. We don't have much time." As Alex left the room, Laura turned to Jake. "Okay, hotshot. Any bright ideas on cracking alien encryption?" Jake smirked, grabbing the chip. "Leave it to me. I've been tinkering with their tech for days now. It's not exactly rocket science." Laura rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Instead, she pulled out her notebook and began sketching a plan. By the time Alex returned, Jake had managed to extract some of the files, revealing detailed records of the Empire's operations on Earth, including plans for resource extraction and population control. "This is worse than we thought," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not just re-establishing contact. They're planning to exploit Earth." Alex clenched his jaw. "Then we move tonight. Once Valon gives us access, we'll upload this data straight into the Empire's network. Everyone will see it." A few hours later, Alex met privately with Commander Valon in one of the station's observation decks. The alien stood silently, gazing out at the stars as Alex approached. "You wish to speak with me?" Valon asked without turning around. "Yes," Alex replied, choosing his words carefully. "I know about the Empire's plans for Earth, and I know you've seen what happens when those plans fail. The rebellion, the chaos. Is that really what you want for humanity?" Valon finally turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "What do you propose?" "We need your help," Alex admitted. "There's evidence proving the Empire manipulated Earth's history. If we release it, people, both humans and others, will demand answers, maybe even change." For a moment, Valon said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. But if you're wrong, the consequences will fall on you." "Understood," Alex said, relief washing over him. Back in their quarters, the crew prepared for the final step. Under the cover of darkness, they slipped into the station's main communications hub, guided by Valon's override codes. Jake worked quickly, plugging the chip into the system, while Laura monitored the upload progress. "They're going to notice soon," Laura warned, glancing nervously at the door. "Almost done," Jake replied, his fingers flying across the controls. 3, 2, 1. Boom. Uploaded. No sooner had the words left his mouth than alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. "Time to go," Alex shouted, grabbing the chip and shoving it into his pocket. The three sprinted toward the nearest exit, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding detection. As they reached the docking bay, they found the rebels waiting for them, their ship already powered up. "You kept your word," the first alien said, gesturing for them to board. "Now it's time to leave." As the rebel ship launched into space, Alex looked back at the station one last time. On the monitors, news feeds from across the Empire lit up with the leaked data. Humanity's forgotten history, and the Empire's betrayal, was now exposed for all to see. Kayla's face appeared on one screen, her expression furious. But beneath the anger was something else. Fear. "What now?" Laura asked, breaking the silence. Alex smiled faintly. "Now we go home, and make sure Earth knows the truth." The rebel ship raced through the void, its engines humming steadily as it carried Alex, Laura, and Jake back toward Earth. The tension in the air was thick, but there was also a sense of relief. For the first time since arriving at the station, they felt like they had taken control of their fate. On the monitors around them, the leaked data continued to spread across the Empire's networks. News outlets buzzed with reports of humanity's forgotten past and the Empire's deliberate erasure of Earth's history. Debates erupted among alien species about the ethics of the Empire's actions, while others called for reform. The rebels' gamble had paid off. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Laura sat near one of the screens, watching intently as analysts dissected the documents. "This changes everything," she murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "People are starting to question the Empire's authority. It's exactly what the rebels wanted." Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Yeah, well, I hope they don't forget who helped them when they start rewriting the rules." Alex stood by the viewport, gazing out at the stars. His mind was still processing everything that had happened. The lies, the rebellion, the choices they'd made. "It's not over yet," he said finally. "Earth needs to decide its own future. We can't let the Empire, or the rebels, dictate what happens next." Laura nodded. "Agreed. But how do we make sure Earth is ready? Most people won't even believe this story." "We'll start small," Alex replied. "Share the evidence with leaders, scientists, anyone who will listen. Once they see the proof, they'll have to take it seriously." As the ship approached Earth's orbit, the planet came into view, a blue-green jewel suspended in the darkness. It looked so fragile compared to the vastness of space, yet Alex couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity had survived centuries of isolation, rebuilding itself from the ashes of its forgotten past. Now, armed with knowledge, it could chart a new course. The rebels guided the ship to a remote location, far from prying eyes. When the hatch opened, the crew stepped out onto familiar soil, the scent of grass and fresh air filling their lungs. The alien leader approached them one last time. "You've done well," it said, its tone respectful. "But remember, the fight isn't finished. The Empire won't give up easily." "We know," Alex replied firmly, "and neither will we." With that, the rebels departed, leaving the humans alone beneath the open sky. As they watched the ship vanish into the horizon, Jake broke the silence with a grin. "Never thought I'd say this, but I kind of miss those guys." Laura chuckled. "Don't get too sentimental. We've got work to do." Over the following weeks, the crew worked tirelessly to share what they'd learned. They reached out to trusted contacts within governments, universities, and research institutions, presenting the evidence hidden on the data chip. At first, skepticism ran high. How could Earth have once been part of an interstellar empire? But as more details emerged, the truth became undeniable. Public opinion began to shift. Protests erupted worldwide, demanding transparency and accountability. Some called for Earth to sever ties with the Empire entirely, while others advocated for cautious cooperation. Amid the chaos, Alex addressed a global assembly, urging unity and caution. "We've been given a second chance," he said, his voice steady. "A chance to reclaim our place among the stars. Not as subjects, but as equals. But we must choose wisely. Our future depends on it." In the end, Earth decided to forge its own path. With the help of rebel allies, the planet established independent trade routes and diplomatic channels, ensuring it wouldn't fall under the Empire's control again. Slowly but surely, humanity began to rebuild its connection to the galaxy, this time on its own terms. As Alex stood on a hill overlooking the night sky, he felt a strange sense of peace. Earth had always belonged among the stars. It just needed to remember. And now, thanks to their journey, it finally had.